Schools across Colorado are dealing with a big problem right now. There are not enough special education teachers in our state.
I had no idea that this was a big problem. Now there's a bill making its way through the Capitol to try and address this issue. Joining us live this morning is our 9 News race and culture expert, Dr. Rosemarie Allen. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So talk to us about what's in this bill.
Well, this bill will reduce the number of exams that aspiring special education teachers will need to take. Currently, they have to take 5 praxis exams as part of their licensure process. That's twice as much as most states. And not only are there more exams, but they're so costly. They're about $500 each, and then the time is about 8 hours. And we're looking at this, and we know that it is really decreasing the number of teachers going into special ed. So if this bill passes, it will reduce the requirement for special ed teachers from 5 tests to 3 and general ed teachers from 4 tests to 2.
Okay, now I'm not super familiar with these tests, so anybody who's also in my same camp, what are praxis exams?
These are exams that are designed to test the knowledge of teachers and the teacher effectiveness. However, research has shown that these tests do not indicate at all how well a teacher is prepared. And they do not indicate the teacher's effectiveness in terms of classroom management, their ability to engage students, or any of that. They do assess content knowledge, but that's a small part of what it takes to be a teacher.
Well, you could see why someone who's interested in special education might go to another state because it's not as expensive, it's not as time consuming, they have less tests. How many tests do other states usually require?
They use 2 to 3.
Okay, and we have 5 here.
We have 5 here.
Wow.
And what's really amazing, the MSU Dean Elizabeth Hine, she found that, for instance, the social studies test does not even reflect the social studies standards that's required by the Department of Ed. And what we have to also understand is that these tests were originally put in place right after the Brown versus Board of Education decision to prevent Black teachers from teaching in integrated schools. So we know the foundation is culturally biased. They're still being criticized for being culturally biased, and we see that in the negative impacts that it has on teachers of color and first-generation students.
So if we talk about reducing the number of these praxis exams, how do we think that's going to impact the quality of special education teachers?
Well, first we know that it's going to diversify the workforce. And we also know that we can now focus on things that really make a difference. Ongoing professional development, portfolio assessments, things like that. So instead of focusing on this test that doesn't really prove preparedness, we can really focus on what teachers need to improve the quality and close achievement gaps.
Some alternative methods there to these praxis exams. That's so many exams, so I'm glad you're bringing this up.
And we have such a critical teacher shortage.
Yes.
Right.
So the lawmakers are going to have to balance addressing the teacher shortage while also not negating or negatively impacting teacher quality.
Right.
And there are so many other ways to do that rather than 5 praxis.
Yeah, I got stuck on that one too. Has this been brought up before? Is this a new conversation?
It is not new. It's the first time we've seen it move through the legislature in this way. We saw this also happen in early childhood. And in early childhood, they allow you to take like 2 or 3 tests, and if you don't pass, then you can submit a portfolio. And there are lots of schools, departments of ed all over the country that are looking at alternative methods.
And if you are the parent of a student who is in a special ed classroom, you understand it's not easy to find quality education in that. Sometimes you have to spend a lot of money, and if you don't have that, you know, what's going to happen with your child?
Jordan, that is such a great point because federal law allows every child to have a free and appropriate education, which means that states are mandated to provide special ed. It is law. IDEA says you must. But how can you when you don't have enough teachers?
Right, absolutely.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us about this bill. I'm sure you'll join us with more on what happens with it as it moves through.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Allen, thank you.